everybody, for being here this morning. So we're just going to get right into it.
Great.
I actually first saw you, I don't know how many years ago, on the Valley Girl show. You were a video...
Oh, my goodness.
You were a video host, producer, one-woman show. What made you pivot away from that?
So, first of all, I love seeing a room full of women. We invest in women, female-founded companies, so this is my jam right here. I started in 2008. I started this talk show called It was the first technology talk show, which is hard to believe, but I really believe it was the first. No one cared really about technology in entertainment yet in 2008. It was like YouTube was just getting going, Google was just getting going, I grew up in technology around incredible entrepreneurs, and so I kind of merged my two passions of entertainment and technology and created this show. And we worked with everyone from like Forbes and Mashable to we ultimately got it to CBS. We're nominated for an Emmy. But through that show, for the whole first 2 seasons, I realized that I was interviewing incredible men, but just men in technology. And so I made an initiative to interview 50% women in tech, because I grew up in a family of technology entrepreneurs, and I never thought I could go into that because I didn't see any women around me in that field. And I realized the main problem was they weren't getting media exposure. And through the show, I always say I'm forever grateful to the women of fashion technology. I hope we have some fashion tech entrepreneurs out here. Yay, I see one. Because once Jen Hyman from Rent the Runway came on the show, it made it okay for Rebecca Minkoff to come on the show, and then Sheryl Sandberg to come on the show, and that changed my life a little bit. This was so long ago, but through that show, I realized, okay, I can help with this problem in a lot of other ways, and so I realized I could help with funding, and funding these early stage female founded businesses, and I didn't have a lot of cash at the time, but sometimes companies would pitch the show and I'd say, can I write you a pennies check or get some advisory equity for getting you media exposure? And I created this nice little portfolio. Some of those companies are now Carbon 38, which is an international active wear marketplace that's partially owned by Foot Locker. We're investors in The Skim. We're investors in numerous other companies that are doing incredibly well. And I used that track record then to raise my first fund. I probably pitched 500 investors and closed 50 of them. And then now we're on our second fund.
No,
so long story, sorry.
No.
It wasn't even a long story short. It was just a long story.
Makes my job easier. You answered a lot of my questions, actually. But we were talking earlier about you. So you have 55 portfolio businesses. 3 of your CEOs are male, right? And I want you to talk about the difference.
They have a female co-founder.
Yes.
I just love to share that I have 3 male CEOs.
There are 3
and 55 companies.
And the differences in dynamics between your male and female CEOs when they're going out trying to raise capital. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, and I don't want this to turn into a man-hating club at all. I see incredible men in the room, and I am so happy you're in the room because we need men involved in this whole conversation. We really do need them. I have 2 little boys. I almost brought one today because it's a Saturday, but figured it out. But I think they are, it's such a good question. There are such different dynamics when they pitch. All 3 male CEOs who came to us with, we invest, there has to be a woman in the founding team. And so there's always leadership dynamics. So we have a COO who's a woman and CEO who's a man. I always feel like no, we do have 100% female founded companies. When these 3 male CEOs came to pitch, all of them didn't have a deck. And we're like, I just raised $7 million, and I have this wild and crazy idea. And I'm like, wow, that's so different from all the women who pitch us, who are saying, I'm raising $500,000 because that's exactly how much I need, and then we can be profitable, and here's all our numbers, and by the way, we're doing $3 million in revenue already. And it's fascinating because this is an interesting time if you guys are following the markets. Uber, Lyft, they are not profitable, and they're these multi-billion-dollar companies, and it's like, what? And when people talk to us about our companies, I laugh because I'm like, no, our companies are profitable. Like, I thought that was the norm, I don't understand, and that's because women raise half as much money, and they double the return, and they raise what they need. So in terms of advice for this, I would say always raise a little more than you need, especially if you're in hardware or an inventory-related business, because you're going to need more capital, and you don't want to consistently be raising. But it's really interesting because I do find that it's like men just, I don't know, like they just are sort of like, yeah, I'm doing this, I'm throwing paint against a wall, and it's going to be fantastic. And
I have
we're
an
just
idea.
much
Here's
more
my
thoughtful.
notes app.
Yeah, we're just realistic, We're much more realistic. Like.
So that gets into the brass tacks of, if you have an idea, if you're an entrepreneur, how should we, go to you? How should we pitch to you at Halogen? What's pitching 101 for you? What do you look for?
So every 2 weeks we have these, we call them our broad room pitch days, and we call in 10 to 15 companies, and they're cold pitches. We usually do a 5-minute pitch and a 10-minute Q&A. Usually it goes a little bit longer, and sometimes we bring some of our investors, and I really believe in meeting as many founders as possible. You can only tell so much from a deck, and some people just aren't good at putting decks together, so I like to really meet them. And I'd say when you come into that room, you should... I like to see a really killer team. If where, you're less talented, like say you're a business person and you don't have a technology person, I want to see that you have figured out how to solve that problem by bringing on a great CTO, or even if you haven't brought them on yet, you know who you're going to hire, or you're aware that you need to bring on a CTO. So I like complementary skill sets in teams. I want women who breathe fire. I want to know you are going to walk through walls to make this company happen. I would like to see someone who I know that if you have no more money in the bank, this company is not going to go under because you're going to figure out how to make it work. And so I like to see real confidence. I like to see $1 billion market, and this is something I really like to share with women, because often women come to me and I say, how big's the market? And they say, it's about $50 million. Now, I raise funds from investors, and I think this is important for everyone to understand. It's like I raise a pool of capital from a whole bunch of investors, and I have to make them a return. In order for me to make them a significant return, I need you to sell your company for $1 billion. So that's my plan going in, and you should understand that from the investors' side, because I think they'll come to me, they'll say, this is a $50 million market, and I'll say, unfortunately, that's not big enough. So if you're a fashion brand, for example, and you're saying this is a $50 million market, first of all, fashion in general is like a multi-billion-dollar market, so you don't even have to worry about that. But say you're like an individual brand. I would say, okay, figure out how you can be bigger than a brand. How can you be a brand marketplace? How can you grow that $50 million business to $1 billion business, multiply that by 10, multiply that by 100, and then come back to me? Because
Can you give an example of that?
Yeah. I think also people don't know when is the right time to raise venture capital. The ideal situation would be you don't have to raise anything, because if you sold Instagram for $1 billion, and you owned the whole thing, that'd be pretty great. You wouldn't have to give your money to anybody. But most people don't have the millions of dollars they often need to start these companies. So I'd say, it's not necessarily always the right thing to raise for like a hair salon business. That would be more like small loan, get some working capital, get some debt, get a credit line. And because that to me probably won't be $1 billion business. Not necessarily true. You look at Dry Bar, and like they do about $1 million a shop. They have 100 million. They have 100 shops, so you can like do the math there. And then I don't know. So, I also want you to like blow my mind with how big this idea is, and I want to see that you're doing something different than anyone else. We like to invest in the first or the second. Okay. So, like we invested in a menstrual disc called Flex. You can pee with it in, you can have sex with it in, you can leave it in for 24 hours. It is game-changing, guys. Not a plug. It really is. But I saw about 10 tampon companies. And not that that's bad. It's a multi-billion-dollar business like tampons alone. But I wanted to find the most unique, what's different in this space. Because if there's many, many tampon companies being started, and I don't want to discourage anyone who's starting any sort of like tampon pad line out here, but I was like, this has a different vertical, and this is something I've never seen before, and they'll have a better track to exit because they're more unique in that space. So if you are running a tampon company, be able to prove to me why you are the most unique, why you're going to be the biggest, and why you're going to be the best.
Amazing. Well, that leads me to my next question. So those are pitches that have worked for you. What's the worst pitch you've ever heard?
I feel so bad, like, because it's like you're betting on people's dreams, and sometimes people come in and, I always want to encourage them. I really, really do. I think there's bad pitches for different reasons. Like we were talking about this a little before, but there's ethical things, Like I don't know. There's ethical things where, at one point someone brought me Jewel, and it was like the fastest growing company. And I was like, this is probably a really great deal, but I don't know how I feel about it ethically yet, And so you think about that. But then there's people, and I always feel so bad because what if someone knows them or something? But there's people who, like, I had one woman come, and she's amazing. And I love the, like, female vagina space because it has made me a lot of money, and I really just like love that space. So I see a lot of weird stuff, like just a lot of like weird condoms for your butt and like just weird things. I don't know.
Please tell us more.
I'm glad that you guys, I'm not awake apparently. This is like, I'm saying a lot of things you probably don't normally hear at BlogHer, but I love it. I love this space. It's very unique. It's interesting. Not enough money's gone into it. And so this woman's like, I have a company for you. It's like in this space. You're going to love it. I'm like, okay. So she pitches me and she says, look, I hate porn. It's a real problem. It's setting a bad example for people's sex lives. I hate porn. I'm like, okay. She's like, I have a solution to this. I'm like, great. I can't wait to hear what it is. I cannot wait. And she...
That's just not watching it, or...
I'm like, great. What's this solution to porn? And she's like, I'm going to show you. And she pulls up her website, and it's people who've like filmed themselves having sex. So I'm like, okay, isn't this porn? Or... And she's like, no, these are people having sex. I'm like, okay, I get it. I totally do. But I still think you're going to deal with the same issues that porn's dealing with. And I'm not going to say it's a bad pitch. It was definitely very memorable where I was like, I get the differentiation, but like it's still people having sex and naked on camera, and like you're going to deal with like the same sort of like media issues and payments issues. So I don't think it was a bad pitch. I think it was like a very compelling pitch, but it was just a different pitch.
Yeah, sounds like it was more about a philosophical or existential issue.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't actually know how much time we have left, but I would like to open up the floor to Q&A. Do we have time for that? Yeah. Wonderful. Oh, perfect. So if you have an idea that you just a question.
Be confident, ask a question, or I'll just call on people.
$1 billion market, guys.
Is anyone raising money? Oh, here.
Hi. We actually emailed last week, and I was just wondering, how do we get invited to those
pitch days?
Yes.
You email me.
Oh.
Jesse at halogenvc.com. That's my real email address. Like, I'm crazy like that. Like, I really is, and I'll get back to you. Sometimes it takes me a minute, but I will get back to you. So that's how you get invited. We'll probably have an initial call with you and then call you in.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
But also by doing things like this. Like, I love it when people find me and they're like, hey, I sent you an email. I can put a face to the name.
I'll find you later. Thank you.
This might sound really simple, but how do you know if something is a $1 billion idea?
It's a really good question. We can define it by revenue. So I'd like to know, it'd be great if you could make it to $1 billion or see a path to that within 10 years. I prefer 5. in your company, like how do you get to $1 billion in revenue? But even once you get to 100 million, and then you start seeing the 200 million, you can then sell for $1 billion often if you can prove the value of your company, be that by the brand, by numerous other things, by the proprietary technology you have. You can prove the value of $1 billion company at about $200 million in revenue. So that's something to think about as well. But I think in terms of seeing $1 billion idea, it's usually you need to know the market really, really well, be able to dig in, look at comps in companies who may not be directly competitive with you, but that have sold for like a couple $100 million, and see how your company you think will compare in revenues and how you can make those models better. I don't know if that answered your question, but.
So it really bothers me when you talk about the fact that women only get 2% of funding, but at the same time, as a strong woman in business, you often I've been told to like lessen myself, to be more feminine. So I kind of want you to talk a little bit.
Like be more feminine? Like they're saying that in your pitch
like I'm
meetings?
too aggressive.
No, be aggressive. What the hell?
But so I think
that's so stupid.
But I think my point is that you do get
you're
that
talking
feedback
to the
as
wrong
a woman.
Yeah, you're talking to the wrong people. Because if you pitch 100 of them, I like it when like women come in and they're aggressive and they challenge me. Like I understand where maybe men would or anyone would be intimidated by that, but I also know that that means like you're gonna get it done and you're smart. You've thought about this. Like you know your business better than anyone. I love it when women are like nervous to pitch their business because I'm always like, why are you nervous? Like you know all the answers. I don't, like you know all the answers, you know your business. But so what are they saying exactly?
Well, no, I'm just kind of wanting you to talk a little bit about the fact that like when you said women come in, they generally ask for just the bare minimum, where the men come in really confident and asking for this huge amount. And I feel like there's like a disparity there that we need to talk about as women. And so I kind of just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I don't know why, but I do feel like even our companies that I've invested in, I'm like, no, go out for 5 million. They're like, but we only need 1. I'm like, yeah, but I've seen this before, you need 5. And so I think you just need to think, okay, especially right now, everyone's like worried about the recession, et cetera. You need to figure out how to get through the holidays. So you want to raise more so that you won't get stuck in, this issue. But I do think that there's, like, I do get concerned when women come in and are like, we're raising $500,000. That's usually a friends and family round. And I'm an investor who wants to go in with other investors. Like, it's not smart to go in alone at the early stages as an investor. Also, you as a founder should want multiple investors because we're all going to bring our networks or something strategic to the table. So I like to see usually a little over $1 million for that first round and a couple of great investors in there. But yeah, you do always need more than you think. If you are raising $500,000, sometimes it's because you're pre-product and you need to prove the market and you're sort of like, I'm going to raise a little bit of money just to test this out or like get my product to market. And that makes sense because then you can come and raise, $2 million or $3 million being like, look, we're already doing a little revenue. It's working. We just need money to expand. So I would go out and just think as big as you possibly can and don't be afraid to ask for 5 because then if you got 4, great. So ask for definitely more than you need. But I think, yeah, you're right. I don't know. And then I look at these companies and, okay, we sold 2 companies for $100 million last year. You do the math. Thank you. And they, by the way, plus-size women's clothing line, Eloquy, and then feminine, vagina tech. This is Elle, which was female condoms and tampons and sold to P&G. One raised $7 million and sold for $100 million. You do the math. One raised $40 million and sold for $100 million. You do the math. Obviously, the return on the $7 million was better. So there's benefits to raising less, but you do need to raise what you need. You don't want to raise an extreme amount. I mean, look at like Uber and Lyft, et cetera, like they're still not profitable. I mean, I guess they're doing fine, but but I just think that, there's more cash in it for you if you raise what you need. So there's pros and cons to both, and I think I don't know, we should have a longer conversation about this. question. That was I'm out.
Well, thank you, and I hope. I mean, I'm inspired. I want to breathe fire now. So thank you so much, Jesse.
Thank you, Audrey.